Good morning. I think the lighting is reasonable in here. I'm always sort of trying to get the setup optimal. So hopefully you can see and hear well. And then your screen's positioned in a place for you to do the same. Go ahead and take your two blocks on their median level and place them back underneath you. And then you can kind of build this from here. So they go in between your ankles. You want to create a frame here where you've got some tension through your ankles into the block. And then you want to feel a nice neutral spine. And so you support yourself to the place where you can find some neutrality. Putting this rolled up bath towel underneath you and sitting back. Find this support here. It might be better for you, right? So if you were able to sit down without it, and you remember that feeling compared to this one and see which is better for you, right? You can also put the blocks up higher, and you can also find a different seat. If this gets really uncomfortable, even partially the way through it, I think we'll start here so you can return to it. You can go ahead and bring one foot forward. It's a little awkward getting into it, so make sure you're stable enough. And then your hips will be able to, you'll have more play in the hips to neutralize their swivel. It'll be even less locked. This is not bearing down on two sides, which actually loosens up the movement in both sides. When you have one side released forward, the other side's softer too. And takes the hip flexors out of their holding position and gets ready for mobilizing. Because this is the position, besides this very deeply bent knee, on the left side, this is the position that you're in when you're getting ready to step. And then the hips have to go swing into this rotational movement. So we'll come into this, a little biomechanics, a little kinetics for us this morning. 1 foot forward. If you're not already there, leave the arms and come with 1 foot forward. Find your stability and then move it a little bit as you chug the arms. So this is kind of interesting to talk about because this is our bipedal motion in simple form without adding actual forward momentum and catch and release the steps, which is a whole different thing that happens kinetically. But bipedal is our specialty as humans. We're really good at it. We've developed it to a high level and then we've abandoned it. Especially in our adult phases, right? This is really important. Start to feel where the tension is coming into your system. See if you can kind of let your head swing a little bit. Since we're stable with the hips, we're not falling forward and catching ourselves. We can be a little easy with the head here, right? And slow it down. So you're letting your shoulders rotate open with the arm movement. And now bring your head straight forward, but keep your neck soft. And then try to soften the shoulders, so just the arms are moving, and begin to settle into the hips. So starting to build soft stability, not hardened, not super fixed, not tense, but stable. Dynamic stability. So there's still some responsiveness to the movement underneath you. And then slow the arms down more, lengthening the elbows a little bit. And then just let them come into an easy swing. Try to draw the shoulders down the back, right? So lift one up and draw it down. Lift the other one and draw it down. Soften your ribs in front. Knit the last attached rib above the floating rib. That's where it comes into the xiphoid process at the base of the sternum. Right here, your breastbone all the way down to the bottom. Press that inward, not in a compressive way, but in a softening that starts up above, below the collarbone, the chest and sternum softens down and in, and then the ribs knit together. And then you really start to drop into the hips at this point. Once the ribs release into place, the low back will lengthen, the sits bones will anchor, and once you're even in the sits bones and you've got some play here, start to draw the pelvic floor up and in. When you feel that engaged, then engage your waist and grow taller without tensing. So it's only an upward float. It's not outwards. It's not lifting you into an arc, it's just pure vertical movement of the waist. We're really isolating kinetic systems here, but along the chain. And then further drop your ribs in and together and down without compressing, which will allow the thoracic spine to stretch because you've let everything hang below. That little like extra quarter inch, an eighth, a 16th of an inch lift at the very top of the diaphragm. You could feel the dome and where all these back muscles attached to it, and the infraspinatus wraps. Infraspinatus is your shoulder blade. Sorry, I was talking to somebody about that. It's your transverse abdominis coming around your obliques. Find that connection, and then we're going to switch legs and do the whole thing on the other side. So this is very interesting because we're mobilizing the joints in a bipedal motion, which is how we are designed to move. Roll with it. And you can feel it. It's got this kind of chugging motion. As I'm doing this, I imagine that my arms are the pistons that are connected to the two wheels of the train. You ever watch trains and how they roll? They have their two wheels set together and there's pistons between them, and they make this pumping motion to coordinate moving the wheels around. And you've got the wheels in your shoulder blades and your hips. And of course, hip sockets do some similar but different things than the shoulder blade. They have a similar positioning in the body. They're a true ball and socket joint. The shoulder blade's a little, not exactly a true joint. It's got some different things going on with it. From here, start to slow it down. And as you're slowing it down, start to stabilize in the center, drawing your transverse abdominis, the obliques in to bring that stability in, scooping the belly, engaging the diaphragm and bringing it up and under the neck to bring the head in a neutral position and land it on top of the shoulders and hips. Slow it down further, stabilize the collarbone, soft neck. Start to lengthen the arms. Just come into an easy swing and roll your shoulders up, back, and down. Knit the ribs, scoop the belly, starting with the pelvic floor, up along the sides of the waist, under the ribs, and then close the ribs on top of it. Soften. Now we've prepped ourselves to come into this seat and a little stillness, which will allow us to experiment with our verticality. So one thing we want poise, we want the balance of these systems. That's what creates poise. So we want to find our knees directly across from each other. So we start by looking down at our knees and noticing if one is forward. So just be in a relaxed posture. And if I'm relaxed, my right knee is released forward. And if I follow that up the kinetic chain, my left hip is pulled back and my right hip is thrust forward. So the very first adjustment I'm going to make based on this visual cue, and now I can feel it, is to pull that right hip back. And it engages this whole superstructure. So really, to pull that right hip back, I need to engage my waist. And again, draw my belly in and then pull myself into center. And really now try to find a balance in work between these two sides. So I felt the work. There was the contractual pull back into center. And then I had to release a little bit on this other side to allow that to happen. And now I need to engage again on this side in equal proportion. So how much did this have to work to get it here? And now make the other side work. So now we're dealing with something that's super mechanical. But the thing that's the layer on top of that is the mental layer of attention to it, attention to the mechanics of the body and holding yourself in balance. And this is where Pilates is all about stabilizing and equalizing the body and equalizing the load in correct relationship to how the joints should work. So now that we're fairly balanced and hopefully we're giving attention to your own. If the lift was vertical on one side, it was vertical and rotational, and noticing how it affects everything all up the line, right? So we find a place here where we plant our hands on our thighs, soften the sits bones down, lift your pelvic floor up right here, but keep the sits bones neutral. So even in this, we tend to engage unequally because this is where we start our uneven movement, right here, center of the body is what we're dealing with. So we want to take an inhale, exhale, drop the belly button straight back, keep the hips as neutral as possible. And so we want to explore the non-sensation of neutrality, right? It's a lack of engagement. It's a letting go, just letting your hips be, and then isolating those abdominal muscles underneath. So you're not tucking, you're not coming into a grip to lift the pelvic floor. It's fine if maybe that's how you find it initially, but then see where you can hold on to it and then re-neutralize the pelvis. And you've had enough experience to begin to really know where that is. It's essential. If you don't do anything else in Pilates but find a neutral pelvis, you'll be good because your body will organize itself around it, right? So this is really where it all begins. Give good attention to this. It's not wasted time. And then also I want you to take your hands right to the crease in the hip. Now we're going to deal with the leg bones in the hip sockets. This adjustment is best done by yourself. There are very few teachers who you would want giving you kinetic feedback here to have that kind of relationship with. So this is really good for you to get familiar with. Make a C curve with the hands. Place them around the front of the hips and the sides. So the thumbs holding the outside edge of the hip and the fingers are hooked onto the base of the hip bone, resting right on the top of the thighs. Take an inhale here and exhale. See if you can rotate the femur heads in. And if this is too close in for you to feel it, then just with the thumbs pressing in the side, you're going to follow the IT bend when you do this. Just drag it down the side and let your fingers come as well to a place that's about an inch or two, still in the upper thigh, away from the crease of the hips. Fingers should be really on the inside of that curve of the top of the quad muscle. The thumb should be wrapped around right in your IT band. Equal points on both sides. Get a little pressure. There's usually some tenderness there you can push into. That's a big tenderness area where we hold a lot of tension. Inhale here. And I want you to exhale. Take pressure out of the IT band and roll the thighs in and press on the inside with those fingertips of the thigh, kind of just underneath it, and then press upwards and see if you can get your pelvic floor to lift with it. It's the on button for the pelvic floor, the engagement of these muscles, and a little tactile sensation and a little rolling, right? So you're kind of wrapping the thighs inward, allows the femur heads to move into position to allow that uplift to happen. So get super mechanical here, guys, but this is the real deal. Hopefully you can feel it working, and then you're going to float the arms up and try to hold it. Hold the evenness in the hips. Now, I know that I just asked you to do a lot kinetically. It may not feel like a lot in terms of external movement. Bring the hands down to where they were. Right? Feel how different the load is. The body offloads when the arms are more rested. They're still working here. Roll those thighs in. Find that lift in the pelvic floor. Sit up on top of your sits bones. Right? Get that band of low abdominals on. Balance the hips. And then from here, lift the arms up. We just added triple, quadruple, 6 times the load to your system by holding the arms up, right? And now float the waist, float the ribs, get taller, longer, without lifting the shoulders. So they're pressing down in this position and the elbows are rotating up like there's a little cushion of air underneath them and they're resting on it. Bring your hands together in the center towards you, like you're hugging a tree or a beach ball. We're going to do this 2 times. Really follow the elbows being up. Inhale, open. Exhale. And inhale, open. What's going on down below? Do you have equal work? Or the hips staying even? Drop the sits bones, lift the low abdominals, neutralize the pelvis, right? Settle the ribs right on top. The next time you bring your hands to center, bring them into prayer. This is just like constructive rest for the arms where we establish the midline and it closes the kinetic chain right into the sternum. If you have your arms in the right position. So we're going to lift the shoulders up, back and down a couple of times with the palms together. And breathe. See if you can breathe into spaces in your shoulders that don't usually get breath, like particularly as you bring the shoulders up, back, and down, carry the collarbone backwards with it, like somebody's pulling a shirt tight against your collarbone here from the back, and then bring it around in front and get a little loose. So the collarbone can slide forward and back. And in this rolling of the shoulders, you can feel that glide. And move your shoulder blades with it and see if you can breathe into some spaces that aren't usually open because of this positioning. And maybe things change in the ribs then when you do. I just got a big shift, which is great. One more. Hopefully this is not like making your stuff freak out, right? And then release the hands down. And then we're going to soften one arm with a swing and release. And soften the other arm with the swing. Notice if one side was working more than the other. I definitely have one side that's like the Incredible Hulk. And the other one's kind of like, I don't know, a newborn puppy or something. It's kind of like all soft and silly and not quite connected. So it's a real disparity between the way the two of them work. And I can feel it. And the most important thing in that is starting to become aware of differences in use in the sides of our body so that we can bring some release. So I have this one side that's super heavy and it still feels like the muscles are contracted and holding on. So we're going to do a couple of things. Maybe you feel something similar up here through the pectoralis, through the rotator cuff. Our shoulders have a tendency with the drop of the core, which is where most of us are because the amount of time we spent in chairs throughout our lives and now currently days, then the shoulders will drape forward. So know that that's part of it. You really want to bring the shoulders up and onto the back. And it may throw your ribs out for a moment, but get the shoulders there. And it should feel good. It should feel open and relaxed, like you can access the upper register of your lungs for the first time, right? Whew. Maybe even feels to you like you're doing a little bit of a back bend, but now check this rib hip connection and really isolate the shoulder placement. Keep it there and then settle the ribs back, right? Okay, this is a lot of seated work, but we're learning how to be seated in a truly upright way, right? Where we're supporting the whole superstructure. Good, right? So now we're going to inhale, sweep the arms up overhead. Now this right here, when you just get past the shoulders, you know, this really low V. Start to rotate the palms and feel when the thumbs are up that you can plug the shoulders into their sockets. Whereas when the arms are down, there's a kind of like block. So rotate your thumbs up, plug the shoulders into their sockets, and now keep going. That's a piece of it. And now soften your ribs as you go and really connect into the spine with your abs. Keep the hips neutral, even as you lift the arms up. So no shift in how you're holding the hips and have equal work on both sides. And exhale, draw down. So the thing that's super deceptive about this is that in our mind's eye, we're just very relaxed and sweeping the arms up overhead and drawing the hands down. But whatever your postural pattern is will get initiated. So if I'm not paying attention, my right arm sweeps up, I rotate a little center, my right knee juts out, and then I spiral around in it, and it feels good because that's the way I usually move. So it takes a lot of attention to really truly hold center and then stop for a moment and learn what it's like to plug the shoulders into the sockets, to rotate the palms. That's why we rotate the palms as we lift, to keep plugging the shoulders into the sockets and open up the channel to get the most down flow through the arms possible. And it goes all the way in and out of the body. It doesn't get stuck. That's the goal. And then exhale. As you bring the palms together, you're reasserting that closed kinetic chain that allows you to connect into all that work you did with sweeping your arms up overhead and resettle the ribs on top of the hips. Resettle the hips. So it's sort of like a reset when you land here. 2 more times. Inhale. Take your time as you go up, finding it on the way, plugging the shoulders into the sockets, closing the ribs as you close the arms, lengthening the waist and reaching the crown up as you bring the hands down. One more time. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, and draw hands down to the heart. Hopefully you're okay here and you've opened things up to the point where it will feel really good to open the knees and slide the hands forward and stretch your shoulders out. And just let all that effort go. Drop the forehead down to the floor and come into a very neutralizing posture. So what we just did, particularly the analysis, the finite controls of the muscles, and that super attenuated focus is very yang. It's a yang practice, active, turned on, rational, focused. This is very yin. So we drop down here. We find passive release. We let all of the muscle and effort go. Skeleton is in support here. So we can let the muscles drape off of it. Find a positioning with the arms that feels manageable. And a positioning, of course, with the hips that feels manageable. Felt really good to stretch them out at first. And now it's feeling good to release them to my side. We're going to do a couple variations of this child's pose here. Great. Inhale, come on up. We're going to stay with this down float for a minute and a little exploration of what is valuable about this kind of yin practice. So take your blocks forward. One goes under the crown of the head and the other goes under the base of the sternums, down where that xiphoid process is, across your upper abdominals, right, where the diaphragm is. And then the other one comes under the head. You pick the height here. If it feels good to have the head a little higher, and that's where some downflow happens. And you're like, oh, yes, the good stuff. Then do that. And it feels good to have your forehead down here. That's good. If your knees are killing you, you've got options. You can put your towel there. I find it's not quite enough lift. You could grab some pillows, blankets, because we're at home, and throw them underneath you here so that your hips are a little elevated, and you'll find it to be a much more comfortable position. And then find the right space for yourself with the blocks in that orientation. So the great thing about being elevated on your blocks here is you can just drape around them, soften and we'll be here for 3 more nice deep breaths, really trying to drop the attention down and into the floor. Let the blocks sink into the chest. Bring your hands back under your shoulders, gently roll up through the spine. And come all the way up. And now we're going to come onto our backs. So have your stuff close at hand here, 2 blocks, and you rolled up a towel. And we'll do a little work on our back here. So I love that exploration. I haven't done it in that particular way before. There's a lot of good stuff there. And now in that downward release we just had, it gave us a chance to really settle the ribs into the body and backwards and to let go of holding patterns. Plus we've mobilized a lot. We've already investigated our alignment. So when we come to lay down, we've got a lot of reference points that we didn't have before we went through that exercise. Take a moment here to adjust your clothing, to settle in. And in adjusting your clothing and settling in, adjust your bones and your muscles like they're your clothing too, because they are. It's your internal clothing. Settle your hips, your ribs, your shoulders. Get nice and easy here. Drop your knees together to touch, really establishing that midline in the body. And you're just going to take a block under the head. I would say low level here, so you can gaze up at your knees. Find that soft bend in the knees and really establish your midline here. And then we want to investigate something. The diaphragm and psoas are really intimately connected to our core. And a lot of times, because we are through the habitual process of sitting disconnected to our core, or whatever it is that we're doing in a repetitive way, we're doing it unevenly, generally speaking, whatever our stuff is that we're working on physically. So this area gets unevenly fixed pretty easily. And then of course, as we've discovered, there's a lot of relationships through the body. We've got an X pattern from hip bone to shoulder, and then from hip bone to opposite ankle. So hip bone to shoulder is your one bandolier with a beauty pageant sash. And then hip bone to opposite ankle through inside to outside of the knee is the kinetic X on the other side. And same, right? So visually draw that triangulation through the body and then anchor those points into the ground. Notice that it goes across the ribs, and the ribs really need to lie in relationship to that oppositional hip bone. So if your rib is poking up above it, you're really being pulled apart, right? Spiraling outwards. So bring yourself in to this nice supported alignment where you have access to a little release in your hip cage, your rib cage, and draw that hip bone and bottom rib, opposite hip bone and bottom point of your rib together, sinking them both into the body rather than letting them lift up and away. And rest the palms down on the floor. Rock your pinky finger side of the arm, the whole arm structure up. So you're on the edge of the pinky finger, thumbs pointed up. You'll remember this position from when we sweep the arms up. Let the shoulder blades, you can even lift off just for a second here, glide down your back and settle your hips. So there's a whole shoulder blade, back of the hips, sacrum connection, which of course all goes upwards into the head. But we think about now these triangulating points through the body and start to feel those kinetic chains. Now, this head on a block trick is pretty neat because it really drops our rib cage into an optimal place. The question is, are we strong enough and are we released enough to maintain this with our head level with the shoulders, drop down? And is the head level with the shoulders, or is there enough postural holding between the back of the head and the tops of the shoulders, or still maybe down in the ribs or low back, somewhere along that line, there's holding that would keep your head from being level with the shoulders when it drops back. So find out. Remove the block, lengthen the neck as you do, try to keep its nice neutral relationship with the chin, and bring your head down And then see if you can, in fact, land really in between the shoulder blades with a nice neutral head. I just got release all the way down my kinetic chain. It's amazing. Hope something similar is happening for you, or you're figuring out where the sticking points is, which is the first part. The release maybe comes later, now that you've identified where it needs to release. And then if you need, unroll your towel just to the level that you need, head supported, to come back into that re-neutralized spot. Okay, so now we just figured out a lot of stuff about our true balanced alignment in this back kinetic chain, which gets really jammed up. It's kind of like a train wreck where all the cars are kind of going different directions. They're not nicely linked anymore, right? And so we're going to separate the knees and bring our feet in. Because we're so front focused, we don't really have a lot of connectivity to the backside of our body, and it holds a lot of tension, which we tend to ignore because we're not sure what to do about it. It's the whole thing. So just allow yourself to soften in here and be in support. And you'll be really, if you've got a neutral pelvis and the kinetic chain through the backside of the body is long, you're starting to identify these X's through the body, these diagonals, zigzags, which are really anchor points for identifying, because the kinetics are spirals 360 degrees. That's harder to visualize. So we're not dealing with the spiralization of the kinetic chain. It's like a double helix, like the DNA, right? So in the biofractal theory here, but balance your hips. Bring your feet in. We're starting to feel that second and third toe engagement. So we're going from the external anchor points to find our alignment inward to the two parallel lines that run through the body. Right, and then you're going to bring your arms up to the ceiling, and you're going to inhale, lift the fingertips up, and then you're going to exhale, drop those shoulders into place. And you've been practicing this all morning, so you know exactly where that is, right? Inhale, lift up, and exhale. A much better feel for it. And you've already neutralized the spine around this, so there's a lot less tug and pull, so you're able to be kind of soft in this movement. How do you lift the arms up without tension? Can you release the chest down to the ground even as the arms are lifted up? And then as you exhale, drop those shoulders into place, release the tension in the chest and ribs more. And hopefully you've really identified that right placement of the head to have the most access to the ribs possible, so you can really deeply release them. Inhale, arms up. And exhale. Soften. One more here. And exhale. Good. Bring your arms out to the side. So just bend the elbows, palms face forward, and then rotate the arms back. And feel how that shifts things in the ribs. It's a lot. Now your chest has to open. Let the ribs release. This is a miniature back bend. Try to let the ribs release equally. Now let the sits bones and tail release, so you're not holding yourself in neutral. And open and close your legs a couple of times. Nice and easy. Don't press them open. Just let them fall to the place where they kind of naturally go to a pause and come back, right? And you don't have to have the soles of the feet together. Just be in parallel and rock to the edge of the pinky toe and then back to flat. And that'll open the legs for you, right? Now we're gonna bring it, rein it in. We're gonna bring it all in here. Exhale, bring the soles of the feet onto the ground. I'm gonna let you do one part at a time to start. Settle second and third toe alignment. Ankle should be lined up with your sits bone. Legs hip width distance apart. Re-identify mentally where you had your hands cupped around your top of your quad, right about a third of the way down, and you rotated in and pressed on the inside of the thigh and then lifted the pelvic floor. Do that now. So you're also rotating the thigh bone in the socket. and settling it in the hips, and then the sits bones are settling down, right? And so that's one step, right? Then we'll do that again. Rock to the pinky toe side of the foot. Exhale, draw the knees in. So as you bring the big toe side of the foot in, dome the arch a little bit, land in the center of the foot, and now start to spiral the thighs in and engage through the pelvic floor, dropping the femur heads into their sockets, right? Step one. We're gonna put these two together in a second. Step two, lengthen the neck, nod your chin into its neutral position, whether your head's on support or on the floor. And then exhale, using the sides of the waist and knitting the ribs together, float your elbows up and in to this parallel position, really feeling the inner engagement of the arms all the way up to the armpit and that wrap around of the ribs and the lats coming in and together and closing in front. And that bottom wrap and the top wrap is the center of the X, which is just above the belly button and lifting along the back of the spine under the diaphragm and into the ribs. The ribs are closing on top of it to hold it there. And there's Pilates in a nutshell. All right, inhale, open up. You kind of feel the X position in this, or the X shape in this position together now, all together now with the feet and the arms. You're going to exhale. Think about rotating the shoulders into the sockets, bring the big toes onto the floor, doming the arch, wrapping the ribs, sinking them into the body, bringing arms and legs into parallel position. One more time, inhale, open. Exhale. Close to parallel. Now, palms rotate forward, stretch the arms out long, keep reaching through the fingers. Before they're out of sight, wiggle your third finger. Remember the second and third toe joint? This one, you want to follow it to the wrist, and you'll be in the center of the wrist, in between the second and third finger joint. Lengthen that down to the ground and link the shoulders into the back, link the ribs into the hips. This is why we start here with long arms along the sides, gliding the shoulder down the back. Your whole kinetic chain is linked in and kind of lengthening and locking in place with the core dropping into the body. And now, with the arms down by the sides without doming up, fingers pulling backwards, elbows softening, which is all tension in the upper carriage. Just keep everything nice and long. You're going to roll through your right foot, anchor through the second and third toe on the left side and float your right shin up to tabletop. And inhale, bring the foot down. Exhale, anchor through the right side, float the left shin up. And this should feel light and easy. You should not be working in the quads. You should be working in the abdominals. Quads can actually release here. Working through the inner thigh. Pelvic floor is lifted. Then the quads can let go. Especially when the leg is anchored. Find that work. Next time you bring your right shin up, pause. And you're going to take your arms out to the side, turn the palms up, draw the shoulder blades, the arms into their sockets. So you have that latissimus dorsi connection into the sides, the tops of the obliques. So the whole side body's engaged. And then you're going to inhale, open your right leg out to the side like a book, right? So you're not swinging at the knee and the thigh bone are level. And then exhale, come back. And guess what else is level? The pelvis. So if you went overboard and rocked, come into a little twist. I can tell we're going to need to do that next. Level out the hips, find a true neutral here, and then inhale, open like a book. Don't go so far. Exhale, come in. Less is really more here because you want to keep it in a level, in a range where it's level and you still have muscle connectivity. Use your abs to come back. and release. Lengthen that leg out and flex the foot. That'll give you length back into that center side. And you might even press your big toe down a little bit. So it'll bring your foot into a little rotation, right? Just to stretch the inner line of the leg. And then bring the leg back, resettle here. So you're gonna have to resettle your hips after taking the leg out nice and long. Find that neutral. Drop the second and third toe joint down, connecting in. Float your left shin up. Anchor. Inhale, open. Exhale. Roll lotus. Inhale, open. And exhale. Two more. Last one. Come in and then lengthen the leg down. Flexing the foot. Ooh. And then maybe pressing the big toe mound down and sort of out towards the edge of your mat. So you get a little rotation in the ankle. So I think it's called pronating the foot, but maybe that's the other way. This is supination. Let's get those two mixed up. It connects into my dyslexia. Draw back in and then settle your hips. Ooh, yeah. Now we want to open and close the legs, but do this nice and easy, right? And we're going to go one step further and turn this into an inversion, which at this point is going to feel really good. And then we're going to work through some other angles here. So hopefully you see how this is all interconnected to core work and to the alignment stuff that we're working on. I'm just trying to really get into some of this nitty gritty here. So we felt like what this feels like to be here, opening and closing. It's a little hard to have real relaxation in this position for the hips because to a certain degree, they're required to be on in order to hold you in some form of stability laying down onto the ground in that rib hip connection, because there's a kind of natural tension there. And we can release that by taking the hips up. And so that's the goal, is to release the tension between the ribs and the hips. So we're really looking for a drop and softening the lumbar spine, which is the floating spine that's below your bottom ribs and the top of the hips. Okay, and that's where a lot of organs are. So when we have chronic back tension there, that also translates to tension in the fascia of the organs because the whole area is tense and held and doesn't get the same blood flow and signaling and movement and lymph flush and all of that good stuff that comes with it because it's kind of frozen. So it's really important to mobilize for all kinds of intrinsic health reasons, right? This towel is perpendicular to the hips and then you slide it underneath you. Whew, and come to resting your hips up on this towel. Soften yourself down and in. Keep trying to release your ribs down, release your shoulders back, and then you're going to float your shins up and just soften the knees into the chest. Try to do this in a parallel position at first, so you really try to drop and soften through the back of the legs and keep your girth narrow for the moment. Then we'll get into the other parts of the hips as we're here. But go ahead and give some tactile massage for the knees. So you roll around, in, out, down and under, right? Over the tops of the thighs to the inside of the knees, and then over the tops of the shins, the outside of the calf. Sweep the fingers under to the back of the knee and around. So this joint can use a lot of love because it just, man, does it carry us, right? So you're bringing attention to this. You're also kind of working through some of the spiral pattern that I mentioned before, and I can kind of feel how that exerts itself on the body, maybe, right? This is a real thing here, mechanically. And then we're gonna move with this. When you come in, roll the knees in a little bit, bring the shins out, down, around, heels towards each other, right? So we're gonna go almost like a figure eight with the knees. If it gets too hard to think about, just think about, drawing the knees towards each other and opening them up. And then just let the feet swing. That's probably the easiest way to coordinate that figure eight. This is the same pattern you were just doing with your arms. Let your arms go and just work the hips in this range and try to keep them nice and easy. So slow it down. Slow is hard. Slower is always harder. Right. Point the knees in, down, and together. Lift them up, open and out. In, down, and together. Up, open and out. 2 more times. Last time here. Down, together, just open to parallel and float. Land the knees. You can bounce the feet a little bit, shake the legs, and then land the knees in a place where it feels pretty neutral. If your legs are grabbing, mine are a little grabby right here because that was a lot of work and I've been doing a lot of work. So my muscles are like, hey, we're awake already. Stop poking us. So they're a little like extra on. So I'm gonna put my feet down. If you're if you are also experiencing that, you will really appreciate this next series, which will help us release it. So it's again this sort of exploration of equal parts work and release. We felt that same thing as we went from our upright posture and all those alignment adjustments to resting forward and forward fold. So there's the yang part of the practice, which is that super analytical stabilizing, and then the yin, where we release in alignment. We supported ourselves to do that. So drop the right knee into the chest, make sure it's coming straight in. It's the inside of the shoulder where the collarbone attaches. And then as you feel called to, and as it feels good, stretch the left leg out. Let's see if you can keep the hips even in that stretch forward and release. So you're not pulling the legs out of their sockets. Try to release the hips equally here into this position. And then release the leg into the chest and try not to do a lot of extra work through the shoulders, the ribs, and the muscles of the chest. Keep it soft. And to find that balance of reaching the legs, but equal work and softening and releasing through the chest, the head, the shoulders, the neck. Take 2 nice deep breaths here. Do 1 more, inhale. And I want you to exhale, find this nice cantilever where the front knee that's bent in drops into the chest and that extended leg. And you can keep a soft knee if it helps you, but the extended leg lifts up to the point where you feel the work release and it's able to float there a little bit. And then you're going to use that point to do an exchange of the legs. Make sure your towel's still in a good place. Mine's a little lower than I started, but it actually feels good. It's kind of like a block for my tailbone and sits bones. Narrow left knee into the chest. Find that cantilevered position first here with the extended leg. Then maybe continue on to get some release. And then maybe cantilever back up to that soft space and let the hips and ribs relax and take 2 nice deep breaths here. Drop both knees into the chest. Now we're gonna go wide. I have to stay narrow for a while because that's not a place where we're as comfortable working. This kinetic chains need some assertion. Wide feels better. It helps us release on the outside a little bit, but we're also generally oriented towards wider because we're not as drawn in. So let yourself release out, get that stretch on the inside of the legs, knees dropping back and in. Maybe grabbing the backs of the knees here, shoulders soften. Release here. And then drop the legs down. Lift the hips up just a little, just enough that you can take some pressure off and slide that towel up from underneath you. Keep the hips lifted, however little that elevation was. Don't go super high. Now, take your hands to the outside or tops of the thighs in the C curve. And with the thumbs now pointed inward, roll the thighs into that position where you're engaging in the inner thigh. And then tuck the tail and lengthen your tailbone down. And feel nice and long here. And if you're still at a place, which a lot of us will be, the neck does not release easily, where it feels helpful to have something at the back of the head, then go ahead and place that there. And you'll know because you had set yourself up there earlier. But when you come back, you can check and see if that helps you drop and release the ribs. Maybe eventually this becomes an adjustment for you. Right, so you take this towel here, put it underneath your head and you go, yep, that's what it feels like to drop my ribs down and really get them in there. Get myself placed and aligned. Second and third toe, knees in line with the hips, feet hip width distance apart, equal drop and release in the hips. And then you're starting to get those X's from rib to hip, okay? And then maybe eventually you take the towel out and then you lay back and you feel good here, right? And the ribs don't pop up and you're able to stay soft and open to the chest and the arms are in their sockets. And then you come in and exhale. Draw your right shin to the ceiling. Inhale, come down. Exhale, draw your left shin to the ceiling. Inhale, come down. Right, 2 more. Each side. You have this moment where you're like, wait, we did this earlier. There's so much setup. And now hopefully your body's just on and in this mode. Inhale, open like a book. Nice, stable, don't go too far. Exhale, come in, 1 more. That we don't really need to do a bunch to assert this. It's just getting it online. Exhale, come in. Release, foot down into its parallel position. Exhale, float up on the left. Inhale, open. Exhale, in. 1 more. Inhale, open. Exhale, in. Stay here. Little pressure through the palms to roll through the foot. So you're transferring the weight from being loaded into this bottom foot, just holding a lot for you, to all being in the upper carriage, which means this you need to spread all the work through everything that's in contact with the floor on the back side of the body. Get it engaged, float the shins up, drop your shins down so they're in a true tabletop. And now you're going to toe tap, knees at 90, exhale right, exhale left. Pause. We're going to switch the breath. So to inhale, tap the right toe down. Exhale, draw back. Inhale, tap the left toe down. Exhale, draw back. Inhale right. Exhale. Inhale left. Exhale. Curl the chin into the chest. 2 options here. We're going to use both blocks. You can interlace the hands at the back of the head, or you can set a block on its low setting underneath you. Use your other block in between the thighs. Right? So from here, you can either do this if you're okay holding your head in neutral, lifting the head up a little higher Trying to get the tips of the shoulder blades off the floor if it's possible. If that's too much for your abdominals at this point, rest the head or just come a little bit lower, just hover the head. So you find where your working range is here in that upper abdominal connection. Don't load the necks. The head should be heavy, hung in the hands. And inhale, knees over to the right. Exhale, center. Inhale, knees over to the left. Exhale, center. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Here we go. Take that block out. Lengthen your left leg down. Bring your left arm across to the outside of the right shin. Inhale, come back. Imagine the block. Exhale. Extend and rotate. Inhale. Exhale. Lean. Clear. Supported. Cross-lateral rotational movement. Do more. And core connected. Good morning, you did it. You got to Pilates class. Should I congratulate you at this point or will it just make you mad? One more. Each side. Come back and rest. And you might want to bring a block under the head. Around. Bring your feet to the outside edge of the mat. Drop the knees together to touch. Yin, once again. You can take your block out from underneath you if you want and rest your head back. I love the lengthening that I get without something under my head. But if you feel like your ribs are still fighting you, then just a little support goes a long way. Just a little lift. Drop your shoulders in. Soften your upper abdominals down and in. Release the shoulders back into the floor. Release the front of the hip flexors. Find a comfortable position here. We can just let everything go and come into some nice deep breaths. So we're getting to a really good point with this work to bring it into some upright work. So we're gonna come along those lines, but before we come upright, we're doing a little twisting, and that'll bring us into a place where we can be upright and start to explore our alignment and stability in an upright position. So we'll take 2 more breaths here before we come into any twisting. Get yourself dropped and released, re-centered and grounded. This is your chance. This is the yin part of the practice to really evaluate what did I overwork, what was tensing up that I might be able to drop and release a little bit here. So I'm not carrying any of that tension on to the next things I do, right? Now there's some stability that and interconnectedness, I call resting engagement, that we would like to take with us. So, but if there's things that you can let go of here that are not related to that, this is a great place to just drop it, drop the load, and soften a little bit. All right, 1 more breath here. And on your exhale, roll over onto one side, okay? Find a towel underneath your head in the side lying position. Should be just about right. If you want to bring your arm underneath as well, so a little lift in the head, you can. That's pretty good. Okay. So from here, you're going to draw your top knee in towards your chest. Lengthen your bottom leg out. Come onto your back. Stretch the same arm as a leg that's drawn in out to the side. So nice flat shoulder, palm open. Inhale here. And exhale. Come over onto your side, but keep the chest centered and bring a block underneath your calf in a place where you can drop the leg down and in. And you should get a nice drop in the shoulders and the chest. Now soften again over onto your side. Oh, this is really different than where you were sidelined before. Make sure this towel rolls underneath you in a way that you can kind of a little runway for the head as you roll the chest open to the ceiling and get some rotational stretch here and release. One more full deep breath. If you want to take it through the whole spine, all the way up into the chest, you can, but make sure you don't overdo. Make sure this is a place where you can drop some tension in the body and not just lean into the load of the sensation of the twist. Have this be a releasing twist rather than a grabbing twist. Okay, inhale, come onto the back. Make sure you have a block set up on the other side. Be the same one if that's the one that's in reach, or you could have your other block over there. Draw the opposite knee into the chest, lengthen the leg you just had into the chest down onto the floor. Opposite hand on knee, same hand out to the side, palm facing down. Inhale and exhale. Make your way over onto your side. Find your block underneath the calf. Support it any way you need to, and come to sideline to start. Take a moment to land here. Adjust your body. And then inhale, roll open with the chest and feel how different this twist feels from the one that you were just in. Coming into it from a different initiation point. So you can lengthen the bottom leg, drop the sits bones, and find your softening position. So we're gonna come back out of this a little bit and then come back in. This place where you can really drop the tension in the body out of you and into the floor. Not concentrating on the deepest twist you can do, pushing into that sensation of spiraling, but releasing in it as much as possible, being the difference. Same position of the body, totally different application of effort and opposite effect within the body. Right? So very interesting. Take 2 nice deep breaths here. Good. Inhale, gently come in. Knee to chest. Bring your other knee in. Come into a little side to side rock. And then to come up to seated, you're going to roll to one side. Use the weight of the head and that outside leg to bring you up. I have wacky hair. I thought maybe I would be able to control it today, but it's defying my efforts. Go ahead and come to all fours here. Find your knees underneath your hips and your hands underneath your shoulders. And you're going to protract and retract the shoulders. And of course, the hips and the ribs are going to come along with it. So it's not cat-cow, which is a forward and back motion. It's up and down motion. So drop down with the center of the body. Let the back sag, release the belly, release the chest, and let the collarbone drop. This is not a bad position. We don't live here. Exhale, go the other way. Draw the shoulders into the sockets, round through the center of the spine. So just push up through the middle. 2 more times. Inhale, drop down. What we want is mobility and then the ability to stabilize within that mobilization. We don't want to be mobile beyond our ability to stabilize, because that's where injury happens. And we don't want to stabilize beyond our ability to be mobile. So it's all about the balance between the two. They need to be in equal proportion, just like rest and work, or release and work need to be. So it's the yin yang of the body. And we've been talking about that throughout class. So we're starting to sort of tie those concepts in, feel the differences in the way they get applied. Now we're going to shift the angle in which we're doing this in just by bringing ourselves up on these blocks. And that'll give us a different relationship from shoulder to hip. You can feel now there's downflow from the shoulders to the hips. And this elevation of the shoulders is going to change because you're already a little uplifted here. So sag, drop as far, and then lift, and you can lift more because you already lifted, so you can go further. You're not blocked by the levelness of the shoulders. At a certain point, they can't keep going, but in this position, they can go a little further. The upper body can lift in more. I'm going to play with this angle change one more time, or maybe two more. We'll see where we end up. Really try to feel equal lift. So see, as you're coming up, are you engaging both sides equally? I'm not. My left is lagging way behind. If we were doing a dance, this move was a dance move, my left side would be 2 to 3 counts behind my right. Right? But the right choreography is just coming in late. So see if that's happening for you. A lot of what I'm doing here is narrating my inner experience. Spend a lot of time checking out why things are working the way they are or not. And that's what we're doing here for you too. This is your time to tune into that kind of thing. Okay, good. So that's a different quality of experience. Come up a little higher. If your wrists are bothering you, it's probably because you're doming through the palms and you're not connected through your second and third finger joint where it connects into the center of the wrist. Aha, see? Now we're starting to draw some parallels, literally. Okay, sorry. Nerd alert, inhale, sink, and exhale. Let's see if you can go further now that you're a little higher, and maybe drop the head to help you get all the way into that upper spine. Interesting, right? Inhale, sink. And you're going to sink. Your sink is going to be even smaller here. Try to sink equally. Notice if that's happening. And then exhale. Come on. 2 more. Good. All right, last one. Good. And now come up to the highest level of your blocks. Like I said, if you're starting to get wrist pain, I gave you the cue to, check in with the center of the wrist, but you can also make fists if they're just tired, right? And it's okay. We're not going very far here. I'm going to keep my palms flat because that's the connectivity I've been using, and really try to find that second and third finger connection into the center of the wrists and align my wrists accordingly. And exhale, drop, and inhale. Exhale, lift up and in. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale, drop, and exhale, lift up and in. So my drop at this point naturally ended up being a little out and back too, because there's not really very far to drop, but I can just drop straight down and then come up. Right, one more. I know we're thinking about that. I don't know if you were doing it or not, but really there's not very far to drop at all. And then keeping that core engagement, push yourself back and stack it up on top of your hips here. Go ahead and take one of these blocks and place it right in between the thighs. Look, I'm perfectly spaced. It's so exciting. What did I tell you? Nerd alert. Get your shins parallel, get your hips stacked right on top of it, and then you're going to come back just a little. There's a point at which this shouldn't be too painful on your knees, right? And then come up to this like neutral vertical position. Exhale, layer the abs, keep the thighs soft, maybe a little stretch, but not too much. One more here. Now come up and with your arms out, stack the hips. Inhale, take the arms out to the sides. Rotate your thumbs up. Draw the shoulders into their sockets the way we've been working on. Exhale, scoop the ribs as you draw the fingers towards each other. Inhale, open. We're going to come into these cactus arms here. Remember this. Bring the elbows forward enough that you can feel the shoulder girdle soften a little bit. Still be some tension on it. Soften the ribs and exhale. Draw the elbows in along the sides. Widen the collarbone. Maybe rotate your thumb back a little bit so you feel the opening in the top of the shoulder socket. Floating the palms down, and as you come down, rotate. Keep the shoulder socket open, but rotate the palms back in towards the thighs. And then one more time. Inhale up. Exhale, open. Your shoulders probably feel different than they did before. Soften. Bend the elbows. Bring the elbows just forward to the peripheral vision. Draw them down along the sides, keeping the shoulders open. Collarbone open and come down. Good. I'm going to take this block out. Bring the blocks forward to the top of your mat. And then we're going to do this choreography transitionally. We've done it in yoga class before. Inhale, take your arms open to the side. Sweep your weight over onto your left knee and step your right foot forward to come into a lunge. If that doesn't feel stable to you, of course, you've tipped to one side, then bring your foot forward, but come back up, particularly being aware of that one side that you tipped to and dropping the hip down underneath you. So let's all take that hip back, both hips back, draw that femur head into its socket, maybe even rotating to the pinky toe side of the foot, around through onto the heel. Set second and third toe alignment, then really push the femur head into its socket as you lunge forward. I'm being super specific today, you guys. I'm usually specific. This is even for me uncharacteristically specific, but it feels good. I love it. Totally into it. Right, so this is how we come into a lunge. And that's a really nice alignment adjustment here. Now think about where your shoulders are. Bring them back open onto the sides, arms underneath the shoulders, make a fist, lift up, bring your hips back enough now to get underneath you with the pelvic floor, lift up to the fingertips, you're doing a big stretch in that back thigh, and then as you're able to, come forward. Worry about how far. Just keep this femur in the socket, hips nice and level, and then come forward. And you're probably using muscles that you don't usually use to stabilize if you adjusted your alignment into your true alignment. Because you probably don't do this in true alignment. So be patient if this feels like way different or way higher or way tighter than usual. Think about keeping those shoulders open and ribs tucked in and come back out. Good. Okay. Fun. Hear me. This is really fun. So thank you for playing along. Hands to the hips. Imagine that block in between your inner thighs on its tall, narrow setting. Get those hips right on top of the knees. Ribs balanced. Arms come out. Thumbs rotate up. Shoulder blades into the sockets. Collarbone nice and wide. And then you're going to rock over to the right side to release your left foot forward and step in. If you didn't feel balanced, then you went down to one side to sweep the leg forward and now came up and on top of it. Start with the right hand on the block. Take your hips back a little. Rotate it underneath you. Rock to the pinky toe side of the foot. Elongate the leg and then come around and into the big toe side of the foot, placing second and third toe alignment, drawing femur head into socket, bringing the blocks back underneath the shoulders, opening the collarbone, dropping the hips, wrapping that inner thigh, the one that's back, around and in, so your hips are coming forward, not spinning open or apart. They're really together underneath you. You can be up on your fingertips or knuckles here, anywhere where it helps you. Drop the ribs into the body, scoop the belly up and underneath, and you may be working harder in the inner thigh and inside hamstring, inside of the knee, big toe than you usually do in this pose. And it might feel like a tighter stretch and like you can't go quite as far as you usually would in the way if you just ordinarily take a lunge and don't think about it. As you come down, you need the blocks in a different position to accommodate the chest moving lower with the hips and do that. Okay, and then we're going to come out, stretch the leg back, and we're going to come onto a seat here and bring your blocks like a bench. And then you're just going to step and sit forward. So that was a lot of kneeling work. If we have sensitive knees, we found out about it at this point. Hopefully remember adaptations I've given you in the past with putting extra padding under the knees and just sticking with things as long as you can. And if you're finding you can't hang with it, take a mental note and realize that there's some things you need to do before you can spend longer with it or come into those shapes. They're not inaccessible to you. There's just other things that need to be addressed first to make them accessible. So have that knowledge and patience. We're going to stretch your right leg out long, bend your left knee, interlace your hands on the left knee, and then lengthen your torso forward here. So this is a pretty casual hamstring stretch, right? And it stretches the whole back chain of the body. So let the chin drape forward and give yourself a couple of deep breaths here. And inhale slowly, restack the spine. It should feel nice. Didn't overstretch anything, but we got some good release. That's a great stretch. Love it. And we'll switch sides. So we're going to bend the right knee and lengthen your left knee up. Flex the foot. Find that nice balance of the foot here. So you're not pronating or supinating. And then lift up. And then you're going to float forward here. Start by just softening the chest, the abdomen, the chest, the hips, as you round the upper body forward. Draping the head, melting the shoulders, releasing the hands. Nice, full deep breaths here. And once you felt like you softened, inhale, come up and restack the spine. Set your legs in a comfortable position here. And it can even be a cross-legged position if that feels nice for you, just one foot in front of the other. So it's great. Just let myself hang open here. Some of us may have sensitive knees and hips that don't really allow this comfortable rest. If you come up higher on top of your towel also, or bring the blocks up higher and put cushions under the knees, you can kind of build yourself up to a level where you can find neutrality in this shape. But the most important thing is to find some neutrality. How exactly you get there is not as important. So it could be this shape, which is feeling superb at the moment. Really, really nice and open, soft and released, with a few exceptions. Because it's not a perfect system where you just get everything equalizing, but being here allows things to equalize, which is great. But you can also do a one leg bent, or just come into a comfortable seat. Thank you guys so much for your efforts, your focus, your time and energy today. I'm gonna pause this. I think this was really exceptional work for me. A lot of the stuff we went through today was new and sort of the specificity. So this will be something that I put the audio into my Descript and look at the narrative of what we're doing along with the visual and kind of plot it out, because pretty interesting concepts came up today. So I thank you for being here, because I'm doing the exploration along with you and figuring out lots of stuff on the way. I appreciate it. I'm gonna pause. If you want to check in about anything, great to hear from you. If you gotta go, I get it. I gotta get to ballet class myself with the kiddo.